Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we've got another great episode for you today. Today, we actually connect with a listener of the podcast. His name's Noah Hines. Noah is an Army vet. He is an avid hunter. He's been all over the world actually hunting, and he tells some of those stories today. But also importantly is Noah took the time to actually go to the little forum that I put together and put on my Instagram page, where if you want to be a guest, you can request some information and get in touch with us. I actually forgot that I put that together, and then he forgot that he requested, so it's actually funny, but hey, we got him on. And so Noah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Your stories are amazing. And to you listeners, if you want to come on and share some podcasts, or share some stories, please go to the Instagram, check out the little Google Forms, fill it out, and we will be in touch. Now, that's it, guys. Let's go ahead and let Noah tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Noah. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, brother. How are you?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I am doing well, Noah. I'm doing real well because you're here, man. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. A lot of my listeners don't know this because I don't think I even advertised it, but I put together like a little forum on my Instagram that you can go and you can like put your name and info in, and we reach out and schedule some stuff. And you were one of the few brave individuals that actually used that form. I actually forgot I built that thing for like months. And then my friend was like, hey, let me help you schedule some interviews. We pulled that thing up, and there you were, man. So thank you for, one, your patience with me getting back to you, and two, for coming on and being willing to share some hunting stories. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, until Jared reached out, I had totally forgot about that. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to the podcast, and I don't know if I was driving somewhere or what, and I was just looking you up, and I saw that, and I was like, well, heck, I'll put my name on there. So
yeah, what's funny is I put it together thinking, oh, I'll just get a whole bunch of people asking me for stuff. And there was like 20 plus people on there. But I didn't at any point set up like a notification. So I set it up thinking I would be getting emails or something when someone filled it out, but I got nothing. So until I reminded myself, I mean, I'm not kidding, like 8-9 months after I set it up to go and check on it. So if you guys are listening and you have a story, be like Noah, be smarter than me, and go on there and fill out that little form, and either myself or my buddy Jared, who's helping me schedule some stuff now, will reach out. But that's not important, Noah. Why don't you introduce yourself, man? I want to hear who we're hearing some stories from today, because we haven't ever talked before this moment. So
yeah. So my name is Noah Hines. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. Man, I started hunting pretty young, probably 6, 7, 8.
okay.
Going out with my uncle and dad pheasant hunting.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then me and one of my good buddies were still really good buddies. We just got back from Colorado here, I don't know, a month and a half ago hunting. But his dad didn't hunt too much. And we kind of did some, small game hunting and trapping and stuff. And
yeah, we
wanted to get into deer hunting. And so we started deer hunting and got into archery and hunting deer with a bow and turkeys with a bow. And that kind of just expanded over the years. And yeah, here we are now.
That's awesome. I have a couple quick questions for you, man.
Yeah.
First off, I know Nebraska is sneaky good with hunting, especially like your gobblers and stuff like that and your deer, but you guys have elk there too, right? Am I jumping the gun here with one of your stories? Have you ever hunted elk in Nebraska? Because I hear there's a small herd.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty good herd. It's once in a lifetime for a bull.
Okay.
And it's pretty tough to draw. It's a bonus point system, so you can draw 0 points.
Okay.
I think I'm sitting right around max points right now, and I still haven't drawn. Known a bunch of people that have.
Oh, you can max out like that? Do you have to like keep putting in and buying additional opportunities every year, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I think I might be wrong here, but in the past it was just kind of you put in every year. That's how our bighorn sheep is. It's just a random draw, no points. Every year you just have the same chance as everybody else.
Okay.
And then around 10 years ago, they started a point system. And so, yeah, I've been putting in, I think shortly after that started. So I've got,
okay,
I don't know. I think max points might be 10. I might have 9.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I'm rooting for you. I'll let you get into some stories here. I just want to tell you one of my favorite jokes because I'm from Colorado and you're from Nebraska, so I have to, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I mean, I assume you're a Cornhusker fan.
Yep. Yep.
So then you know that the N on their helmet stands for knowledge.
Yes, I have heard that one.
Sorry.
I'm proud of it.
My whole life we've been, I mean, I don't know if Nebraska necessarily thinks that Colorado's a rival, but Colorado thinks Nebraska's a rival. Maybe we're the little brother. I don't know, but I had to do that. So sorry about that, Noah.
No, that's good. That's good. You have to.
Cool, man. All right. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to share about your backstory? Otherwise, let's dive into some stories.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to start off with a pretty good one. So I was in the Marine Corps right out of high school. In my last year in the Marine Corps, I got stationed in Zimbabwe.
Oh, cool.
And part of that was my own doing. Just kind of, I basically had to take so the unit I was in, I was a team leader. And in order to get stationed over there, they didn't have a team leader spot. So I kind of dropped down a little bit as far as the billet goes. But I had some friends that had been there that had done some hunting. And so I knew that they'd been hunting there. And I was like, my last year, this is what I want to do.
So that's why you picked Zimbabwe, was because you knew you could dabble in hunting when you're out there. Okay. That's pretty cool and understandable. All right.
Right. So I, fly into Harare and I get picked up by the Marines there. We get to the house. And I think one of the first things I asked the guys there was, hey, who do I need to talk to do some hunting? And they said, oh, you need to talk to this guy, Steve. And so I said, all right, where do I get his number? And so one of the guys was like, oh, I got his number. So
Steve, military guy or more of like a local Zimbabwean?
No,
is that even the right term? Okay.
Yeah, he's a professional hunter over there.
Okay, cool.
And so I've been in the country for a couple hours. And I text Steve and I said, hey, my name's Noah. I hear you're the guy to talk to about hunting. And so he responds with, yep, let's go get breakfast tomorrow. So I said, okay, I can do that. So we went and got breakfast and got to become really good friends with him. In fact, one of my good buddies who is from Lincoln as well, I got him stationed out there too. So it was like one of my best friends. We were both out there. So we basically probably went out hunting or fishing 2 to 3 times a week for the 10 months that I was there.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Let me ask, so did he, and he's a PH, right? It's his job. Did he charge you to like do the hunting? I've heard from another friend that it's kind of like a menu, right? So like if you shoot it, then you pay for it, but you can hunt all you want. It doesn't cost you anything until you put something down. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. So basically what we did is he just had a daily rate that we would pay just to cover his time and mileage. Okay. We were driving his vehicle. We were using his firearms and everything. So we would pay that. And then a lot of the stuff we would hunt was free. Like problem animals. So we would go out and shoot baboons, hyenas, stuff like that.
That's cool.
And so we didn't have to pay for that. The stuff we did pay for was like plains game, zebra, impala, eland.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of some of that stuff. And so like traditionally, if you were to go on a hunt over there, you would book a hunt with an outfitter, and then they would have an area they could hunt, and then you have so many things on the list that you can hunt.
Okay.
We were just going out on private landowners, and then doing some problem animal control, because that's what he does. So it was kind of just, it wasn't like a week at a time or whatever. It was just, hey, we can go out tomorrow, and all right, we'll figure out something to do. So we'd go somebody's place that he had lined up or whatever, and then we would just, they'd have a kind of a list of, this cost this, and this is what you can shoot. So we, go hunt.
That's pretty cool, man. So I know that like for most like Americans specifically, right? When you go to Africa, you can't bring the meat back. It's a legal thing. So I know that in general, it's left there. It's you taken to the butcher shop and they resell it. It's taken to villages and they eat it, and it's taken care of. People eat it. But did
Oh,
you have the
absolutely.
opportunity to eat it yourself, or was this gentleman like, hey, we're just doing this, let me, because that's also part of the money that PHs make, right? Because they do get to resell that meat. So did you get much meat from all this hunting, or did you let him take it and do his standard PH stuff with it?
So yes, we did get to eat a lot of it. A lot of it went to just, the local people around there.
Yeah.
So we would, shoot something and clean it, and then they would haul off the meat. And then
Okay.
there was one place that we hunted, and or a few places they kept the meat, and then they would sell it.
Okay.
But yeah, so we got to eat. Oh man, a lot of impala.
What was your favorite?
I think eland is probably one of the best things I've had.
I've heard it's good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We ate hippo, porcupine.
Oh, hippo. I imagine that's just like land whale, just blubber. Or what is that? What is that like? Like a giant frog is something I imagine I could compare the taste of that to. Hey, hunters. Have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
I would compare it to beef, like
Really?
very lean beef, tough.
Huh. I never would have guessed that.
I made jerky out of it. It was good.
Okay.
It was really good.
That's cool, man. Okay, well, I'm kind of derailing your story with all my questions because you're in a unique circumstance that like a lot of us Americans can't do. So I'm like really curious, but keep going. Tell us.
Right.
I'm sure there's more to it.
Right. So, I guess, so one of the first nights that we went out, we were going out after some hyenas. And so we'd hunt them at night, call them in. And these are big hyenas. They're the ones that we would go hunt. They're killing livestock. So they're bringing down cows.
Okay.
They're big animals. So we were hunting them with a 300 Win Mag. So this is one of my first hunts in Africa. We go out, we set up, and Steve has a high rack in the back of his truck. And so we're set up in there. We brush in the truck and wait for the sun to go down and start calling. And so he's got basically these sounds that he's made off of videos off of YouTube and stuff of hyena calls and, like dying goat, dying cow, pig.
Yeah, that's cool. Resourceful.
Yeah. So we're calling, and you can hear the hyenas kind of come out of their den, and they make just some crazy noises. But you can hear them, they kind of wake up. The sun goes down, moon comes out, they kind of wake up, and you can hear them, and they're answering our calls. And so they're working closer, and we're working closer, and everybody's kind of getting excited. And we're using night vision. And it's the one that I had, it mounts on your scope, and then you have a screen that sits up above. And so it's pretty bright. It's like I have a tarp that's over me so we don't spook them.
Yeah.
So we watch these hyenas come out, and they're moving around, and I get on the first one and shoot it. Get on the second one, shoot it. And then all of a sudden, we hear one right behind us. Like it is 10 feet from the truck behind us.
Oh shit! So what are you hearing? Are you hearing pawing, jawing, howling? Like what's?
No, they're like, I'm trying to think of how to explain what they sound like.
Feel free to do an impression.
Oh, I'm not going to do that, man. I can't, like, you'd have to just look it up. I can't even, but I mean, they're loud. They're really loud.
Okay, but it's like an audible noise that they're making from inside of their body out their mouth. It's not like clapping of teeth or just like pawing.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Right. So Steve's like, holy cow, it's right behind us. And so, like, we turn around, and I mean, it could easily jump in the back of the truck. Like, and it knows something's up. It's mad. It's, and so I'm like, I can't see it because I've got this screen in my face that's, bright white. And so, like, my, looking from that and then into the darkness, like, I can't see it. And he's like, it's right there. Like, I can't see it, man. And so he's like trying to get on, and it's 10 yards from us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I cannot see it, man. And so he finally shoots it and dumps it. We turn around facing the front of the truck, and another one comes out, and I shot that. I think that night we shot 5 of them in total. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so that was the first night. And so, I mean, it was awesome. So we go find them, pick them up, and they're huge. I mean, they're, you see pictures or whatever, and they don't look that big. These ones are, I mean, they're living off of livestock. They get really big.
I'm assuming kind of like coyotes or wolves here in North America, like not really eat for eating, right? You're just kind of taking them out because they're probably pestering the livestock.
Right. And they kill people too. So
okay, no shit.
Oh yeah. So they're endangering livestock and people, because like when we would go out, we're setting up next to houses basically.
Yeah.
So it's because they've had a problem with these animals. And so we would go out and shoot them. I think that year we shot 10 hyenas total. Went out a bunch more times for them.
Okay.
Ended up shooting, my buddy Kyle shot a great big one. Absolutely massive, later on in that year. But so, yeah, just gotten there, gone out. We'd gone out for a hippo before, like my first hunt in Zimbabwe was for hippo. We didn't find, it was another problem animal, didn't find it. So I, call my buddy Kyle. I'm like, man, you gotta get out here. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So probably the funniest story out there. So this was a few months later. Kyle had made it out, and we had a call for some problem lions in this area. Okay. So we took a couple days off work, and we drove, I think it was about 8 hours away. And the last 3 hours were on like washed out dirt roads. So we were 3 hours from the closest paved road. So we get out there, we shot some baboons to kind of use as some bait. And we had one of the guys that works for him, Lawrence, he's like the 7 foot tall, huge guy, just awesome. Okay. Always laughing, always has jokes. But so he went with us, and then we had a Zimbabwe parks ranger with us as well. So we go shoot some baboons.
Oh yeah, I heard that. You need to have a park ranger for certain animals like lions, right? Okay.
Right.
That makes sense. Got it.
So we spend the afternoon, shoot some baboons, and we set up that night, and we were set up kind of up against this big hill. So it was pretty steep behind us. And then we were looking out over this field. So sun goes down. We're calling, lion challenge roars. We've got distress calls, all sorts of stuff. And tensions are pretty high, right? This is, It's not just calling in a coyote at night. So we're sitting there, and we'd been calling for a couple hours, hadn't seen anything. We're scanning with lights. We're using some night vision. And so we're sitting there, and everyone's getting a little bit tired, but I mean, obviously you're a little stressed out, Yeah. Well, all of a sudden we hear this growl from it is right there. Gosh. Just this loud snarl. And Michael, I jumped probably 3 feet straight in the air.
I believe it. I believe it. I don't think I would have jumped because my pants would have been too full from crapping myself. So,
Right.
But I believe a jump is also a perfectly warranted response.
So I've got my like safeties off, looking around, ready to go, and everybody just starts laughing at me. Well, Lawrence had climbed underneath the truck and was sleeping the whole time, and that was him snoring.
Oh, that's awesome. That
So
is
everybody's
amazing.
laughing at me, and it's like, hey, man, cut me some slack here.
Yeah, that's too funny, man. When you're done, you just tell me when you're done. I have a somewhat similar story that is not hunting but camping related, and I'll tell you that one. So you just let me know. Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance. Ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
All right. Well, I've got one more funny one.
Okay, well, if
Africa.
you're done with that lion story, did you shoot any lions? Let me ask that.
No, we didn't. We didn't find any. Couldn't call them in. They had come to find out they'd kind of moved on because they're cats. So they travel. They cover some areas. So they moved on from the area.
Yeah.
We hunted them for 3 days there. Didn't run into them. So
okay, gotcha. Well, let me tell you my story real quick, just as long as we're on the funny stories here. So I'm camping. This is college sometime. I don't know. And we're going out with a group of folks down to Canyon City, Colorado. It's kind of south central Colorado. A good drive from home. But either way, we are doing what college kids do when they camp. We're making a lot of noise. We are drinking. We're eating. We're probably not cleaning up after ourselves. No, I will say, all said and done, we leave campsites better than we got there. But in the moment, we're not cleaning up as we go, right? If that makes sense.
Right.
So there's, I think, 2 or 3 girls, 3 or 4 guys, and we're all having our fun. And I'm newly dating my wife. And so everyone wraps up the whole evening of whiskey and beer, and we go back to our tent. We get to the point where we're naked in the middle of the night. Something stirs, and we're like, "Whoa, what is that?" Like, "Oh my gosh!" And so I'm like, I don't. My now wife is like, "Do you have the car keys or a gun or a knife?" And I was like, "I don't have anything." I was like, "I went to bed drunk. Like, I don't know what to do right now." And we just hear something. We're like, "Oh, we didn't clean up the camp." We can hear cans being shuffled around. We can hear like bags of Doritos getting ruffled. We're like, "Oh God, there's a bear." And then we're like if we move, like we can't even get dressed because we're afraid we move, like the bear will come and eat us. And so we lay there just holding each other's hands naked, just terrified for hours as we hear this thing happen. And it wanders off at some point. We're like, oh God, oh my God. And then it comes back. We're like, no. And again, just you can only be scared for so long before you eventually do become exhausted. And we did fall back asleep. Right. The next morning we wake up and we go and we finish cleaning up camp a little bit. And we're like, oh God. And so we're having breakfast. Like, guys, did you guys hear that last night? And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, well, there was a bear in our camp. And everyone's like, what? There's a bear in our camp? And like, no one else had heard anything. And this one guy goes, well, I had and again, all we heard was like sniffing and rustling. And this guy goes, well, I had a stuffy nose. So I got out of bed and started cleaning up camp and I didn't see anything. And so we were just terrified in our tent for hours because this guy had a stuffy nose, didn't want to wake up the people by doing it in his tent, so got out of his tent. He's like, I walked off and went and peed and came back, and we're like, oh, yep, this all adds up. You are our bear. Yeah. So I was just completely terrified for absolutely no reason.
That's funny.
To this day, I remember being so scared. Probably because I was still half drunk, but that's my story about someone scaring the crap out of me that I didn't need to be scared about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's funny, man.
Yeah. So what else you got? You got more? Any stories? Any more stories from Africa? I'll ask.
Yeah, so I've got a baboon story. It's pretty good. So they have these. They're like these huge rock pile. They're like hundreds of feet tall. We call them gomus, but it's kind of crazy. It's just like someone stacked up a bunch of boulders, just straight up in the air, and they're all over the place. Well, the baboons, they loved hanging out there. So they come down, they raid fields and terrorize stuff, and then they kind of live up on those big rock formations. So generally, whenever we'd see them, we'd find them, they'd run up on there, and you'd sit there and you'd glass, and you'd kind of have all the little ones, and the females would be up front, the younger males, and they're kind of messing around, and then the big males, they would go up to the top, above all the other baboons, and they would hide. And so you'd sit there and just glass and you'd wait. And then pretty soon, you'd see one poking his head out looking, and he's up at the top, that's the big one. And then we, make a move, get in a position, and shoot him. And so a lot of times it's a pretty long shot. It's a couple 100 yards, basically straight uphill. So this one time Lawrence was with us again, and we find the big one. We get in a position, and we shoot him. And I don't remember if it was me shooting him or who. It might have been me. Shoot this one, and he falls. Falls out of the tree and falls, 100 or more feet down.
Okay.
Onto the ground. Well, Lawrence just takes off running after this thing. And they're mean. I don't know if you've ever seen their teeth. They're like that long.
Yeah.
They're mean.
I've seen enough to know that you don't mess with big monkeys of any sort.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so Lawrence doesn't have a gun. He doesn't have anything. He just takes off into the bush.
Oh my God.
This
is Lauren the 7 foot tall funny guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe he's got a shot. Okay, keep going.
Right. So he's got a little bit of weight on these things. So all of a sudden we hear him just hollering and yelling, "Hey, come here." So we take off running, and we, get part of the way up, and here's Lawrence, and he's yelling. He's sitting there holding 2 rocks in his hands. And this baboon is still very much alive.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's still alive. We're like, Lawrence, what are you going to do with those rocks? And he was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just
seemed like a good idea at the time.
Well, this baboon, he had fallen, and he had wedged himself. There was these 3 rocks that came down and basically made a funnel.
Okay.
And he had fallen, and his butt was wedged down in this funnel, so he was stuck.
Oh, ass down. Okay.
Yeah, still alive. And so after and he's trying to move, so after we figure out he's stuck, he can't get out, and we're like, well, we have to finish this thing off, so how are we going to do it? Well, there's rocks all around him, and they're all pointed up. And so it's like, there's a pretty good chance of getting a bullet coming back out of this thing after you shoot him. So we ended up taking Steve out his .44 mag. So he kind of lines the pistol up, points it over the rock, and hides on the other side and shoots. And we finally got it, took care of it. But it was just, Lawrence had his 2 rocks, and he was ready to go, man.
How many shots blind from behind the rock did it take before you connected?
I think it was 3.
Okay. That's actually not terrible. That's pretty funny, man.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I've heard about like baboons are strong enough to rip a man's arms off. Like everyone thinks about gorillas, but baboons and chimps are just freak strong, crazy strong, and they have giant teeth. No thanks. Yep. I don't want to mess with those things.
Their chests are just absolutely huge. There's small ones, but a lot of the ones we were shooting were big.
Yeah,
and they, they're kind of like wild hogs. If you think of, just kind of the damage that they do on crops. Huh. And they've been known to steal babies, out of, from rent houses and stuff.
Terrifying.
So
and I assume they have nefarious purposes with those babies. So, okay. I don't want to go too in depth into that. Well, that's crazy. So let me ask you this about Africa. So I think that was your last Africa story. Did you come home with any cool trinkets, memorabilia from all of that hunting? Because I know that, some things are cooler than others, but what did you bring home with you? Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight, yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down.
I brought home a few rugs, because so over there, they manage their wildlife a little bit different than we do. So if it is on your property, you own it, right? You can capture it, you can sell it,
Yep.
you can hunt it, you can have someone pay to come hunt it. And so we were hunting on private land, so it was 100% legal, but you don't have like a tag, right? So I didn't have the documentation to be able to bring a lot of those trophies home.
Gotcha.
So we did have some of the stuff mounted and just left it in the house there for the other Marines, some of the cool stuff. But yeah, it was most of it just, the meat went to local people. We went to, we kept some of it and, taking some animals out there causing problems.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to do the math of like if you went every other day or so for 10 months, that's a ton of hunting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we didn't shoot something every time. I think I hunted 9 days for a kudu and didn't get one.
What are those called? The something ghost?
The gray ghost.
The gray ghost. Yeah, those things are pretty cool. They're
tough. And it's amazing how well those animals blend in, like especially a zebra. You think, oh, it's black and white. You can see that from a mile away. Man, they blend in, and it really takes, like, it took a while to kind of get an eye for the wildlife and being able to pick it out. Because like around here, you're driving down the road and like, oh, there's a deer, and your wife's like, what? How do you see that or whatever? But being able to do that with a totally different animal, different shapes, colors, all this stuff. It took quite a while.
Yeah, different terrain. It's just that broken up pattern, I bet, is what makes it difficult. But I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
I hear there's animals everywhere, but if you're looking for specific problem animals, it's probably not quite as easy as if just going out and having fun shooting for meat. So.
Right. And, and sometimes like with the hyenas, sometimes you go out and it's just a slam dunk and you'd shoot a pile of them. And sometimes maybe you get one.
Yeah.
And maybe not. So
cool. Very cool, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's leave Africa. Where are we going next?
All right. Well, so I moved back here after I left Africa, and me and my buddy, we'd been planning an elk hunt for quite a while. He had guided in Colorado for a couple years and never actually hunted himself. And so he was like, hey, we need to go back to this place, 3-point unit. And so it was that. So I got back to the States in end of 2016. So it was 2017, September, we went out for elk. So we had 6 guys with us. We had horses. It was a pretty big camp. It was the biggest camp that I've ever been on as far as a hunting trip goes.
Yeah, 6 guys and horses is pretty substantial. Did you guys take a whole wall tent out, or what did you guys do when you got out there with?
We had a big 5th wheel camper.
Okay.
And then one of the guys that went, he builds custom horse trailers.
Okay.
That's his business. And so he brought out a big fifth wheel, horse trailer with
Yeah.
like living quarters. And then we had another horse trail. So we had 3 trucks, 3 trailers, 6 guys, horses for everybody.
Okay. Cool.
So first morning, my buddy Tanner, he says, "Hey, I've got a spot. It's like a 2-hour ride in, a 3-hour ride in. It was pretty far." But he's like, "There's usually always elk in that area. Let's go check that out first." It's like, "All right, sounds good." So we leave early, ride up the trail. And so there was 3 or 4 guys in camp. I mean, they ranch, they're cowboys, and so they know horses.
Yeah.
I am not a horse guy.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
my buddy Tanner, he's lived on a horse for a pretty big portion of his life. And so he's just going, and I'm like just stiff as a board, It's like, man, this is tough.
Yeah.
So we get up there and like, I'm ready to park this thing and get off, and I can walk. I'm good at walking.
Stretch the legs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get up to this hill, tie up the horses, and get up over this ridge, and just instantly we're glassing elk. They're bugling, they're messing around, they're doing a lot of stuff. And I'm like, man, day 1 of my first elk hunt, this is awesome. I could probably get into this elk hunt thing.
Yeah, right?
So we dropped down and chased after those elk, and couldn't get close enough to really get into them. So then, they go up in bed. We found a wallow, and we're just kind of taking a nap right there. And about 1 o'clock, we hear just a lazy bugle, pretty close. So it's like, well, let's, pack up our stuff and head over there. So we get in, we sneak into pretty close to where we heard the bugle, and we start calling right away. And instantly, I mean, they are just fired up, just getting after it. We got bugles coming from every direction. And so it's like, all right, day 1, here we go.
That's so awesome, man. I just started talking about 2025 hunting and elk hunting and all this stuff. And man, you're getting me fired up. This is awesome. I love it. Okay, keep going.
We've got some more elk stories too. So,
all right.
So we get in there, and my buddy Tanner, he was up to shoot first. So I'm calling, and we've got just elk screaming. And so he has 1 bull come in, he draws on it, doesn't get a shot. He's holding, lets down. That bull moves off. Another bull moves in. So we got 2 bulls in. He pulls back his bow for the second bull, and both are legal. He draws his bow back, and we're in some pretty thick stuff. Doesn't get a shot. He's holding. He lets it down, and I don't know what happened, but he rolls his string off his cam.
Oh, no way.
So he's up in front of me. We got elk screaming all around us close. And he's looking at me like, what? And so
3 hours into the backcountry, 3+ hours. Gosh.
Right. So we switch spots, and he starts calling. And like this whole time, it's like we're moving around. We're trying to figure out how to fix his bow. And it's like, okay, well, we've got some duct tape and some 550 cord, and, like this isn't going to happen. So I move down, set up, and he starts calling. And this bull, it comes in quartering. So it comes in kind of in front of me to my right a little bit, and it's moving left to right, or right to left, sorry. So it's coming across, and it comes in this little opening, kind of turns a little bit to me, and like, man, it was perfect. Just sink it right in him, right? The 6 point. So, like, I mean, we were just, just blowing up. Like, it was awesome. So it was like day 1 of my first elk hunt. I just shoot a 6 point bull, and
That's amazing.
So the bull whirls, runs off. And we've still got elk screaming, like wanting to come in.
Yeah.
So we counted 5 different bulls in that one area. So we sit down, wait a little while, get up, and we actually bumped the elk. After, we waited an hour or whatever, he bumped him. Well, what happened was right when I shot, he was coming broadside, or he was broadside. And when I shot, he had stopped, and then as I was squeezing that off, he turned 90 degrees towards me. So when I shot, he was actually quartering pretty hard to me.
Okay.
By the time the arrow got to him.
Got it. Well, how far roughly? I don't know if you mentioned
yards.
that. Okay, not too
yards.
far. That's good.
No. So we waited an hour. We bumped him, and we're like, "Oh man, this isn't good." So it was 6.5 miles from camp is where we were at. So we were like, "Okay, well, let's back out of here. There's obviously elk in this area. We don't want to mess it up. We'll go fix Tanner's bow, or try to. We'll come back the next morning."
Is he by chance like similar draw length? Did you guys consider like you letting him use your bow, or is just not in the cards? Not similar size.
Yeah, I have a 30-inch, and I think he's a 31.
Okay, so it would have been tough.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So we come back the next morning. We find the bull right away, and that arrow went in behind his shoulder, and the broadhead was sticking out of his ass. Like,
ooh, he was quartering hard.
Yeah. So he didn't go very far. So we found the trail that we came down originally was pretty rough. Well, we found another trail that kind of went out the bottom and then wrapped around and went back up and then towards camp. Well, the funny thing is there was an outfitter drop camp like on the other side of the drainage, like just a couple 100 yards away. So there's a guy from New York sitting in there, and he had heard the whole thing, like total rut fest down, like right below camp. His son was out hunting in another area. And so then, we come out packing this elk out on our horses. Like we had the trail went right through their camp. So talked to them for a little bit.
How excited was he for you guys? Or was he more they took my elk?
No, he was an older gentleman, super nice. He was really excited about it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So let's see, that week. So the first couple of days were really good, and then they shut down. It was pretty hot. They shut down for most of the week. And then we had a little bit of action towards the end. But I think I called in 8 bulls that week.
Damn.
Called one in for another guy, and I don't remember if he missed it or if we couldn't find it. But yeah, one of the really cool stories from that trip is, so me and my buddy Tanner, we went, instead of going kind of up the trailhead from camp, we went down, wrapped around. So it's right on the edge of private and public. And there were some cabins kind of right there. Well, we're looking down into this drainage on the public. So we were kind of glassing there, listening and glassing for the evening. So we're hiking back out in the dark. And as we're hiking back, we can hear elk moving through the trees. And this bull he's glunking. It's loud.
Yeah.
It's like, man, these elk are right here. So it's dark, full moon. I mean, obviously we can't shoot them. I was like, hey, let's mess with these things a little bit. So I start calling, and this bull, so he's glunking, messing with his cows. And I think I just let out a bugle, and he just came in on a string. Like you could hear him and it's pretty dark. So like you could just hear him just crashing through, just coming straight at us.
Yeah.
So I'm just like squatting down in the trail, and my buddy's like standing next to a tree, and this bull, he came up to 8 yards from us and just screamed in our faces. And it's like, you can just like feel, just the sound, just rattling your whole body. And it's like,
that's cool. I've never experienced that, but I want to so bad, man. I've been out with some great callers, and we've had some elk bugle back, but most of them came in just silent, like not interested in really playing. They just wanted to see what was going on. And I've never had that like sub 20-yard bugle. And man, that'd be so cool.
I've been pretty fortunate. I've gotten some pretty good bugling action over the years, but so that was first elk, first day. So after that, I was hooked.
Okay.
I was like, I'm going elk hunting. I don't care how or when or how or but this is going to happen. So the next year, got tagged for Idaho, went up, and it was just me and another guy. And, it makes a big difference when there's a guy that knows the area. So we just basically, put a finger on the map in Idaho. It's like, well, we get tagged there. We went up.
Started walking.
Started walking. It took us all week to figure out where the elk were. And the last day we got into some really good bugling action. I guess we had a few other elk that we found, and some other guys got in them before we did. But last day we got into some good bugling action, just couldn't make it happen. So that was year number 2. Went out, I hunted Idaho a couple years and I never shot one in Idaho, but my last year I got a pretty good tag. And this was 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. I got a really good tag in Idaho. I was out there for 2 weeks. Whew. And I was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
So at the time we had 3 kids. We had a baby, and I went out elk hunting for 2 weeks.
How you say baby? Are we talking like 1 month old? Are we talking like 6 months?
8 months old.
8 months. Okay, that's more reasonable. But still, your wife's a saint, brother.
Yeah. I am super fortunate. Usually, she's pretty worn out by the end of hunting season. I usually go on two big trips a year, 1 or 2. So
cool.
She's pretty worn out by the end of the season. But
how old is the whole tribe?
We've got 5, 3, 3, and a year and a half.
Oh dang! Okay, I thought you said you had 3 and one of them was a baby, but you had twins at one point. Okay, Good for you, man. Yeah. Good for you. I have a 5. He turns 6 next week, and a 3. So
awesome.
I understand your wife being tuckered, because that's a lot, man. Good for both of you.
I don't think I could do it if the rules were reversed.
Yeah.
So I was out for 2 weeks, and I did not shoot a bull, but I had 11 bulls within 30 yards, and I was in bugling bulls every morning and every night for 2 weeks.
Yeah, just no clear lanes, or just what happened?
Yeah, just
bump them every time.
No, just I didn't have clear shooting lanes a lot of the time, or I messed up.
That happens.
So a lot of the areas I was hunting was just really, really thick. And so like at one point I had a bull at 5 yards, and we were basically in a brush pile. Because how I hunt now is I don't call too much anymore. Basically just find one bugling and just sneak in on them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're in that thick stuff and you're walking, you're making a lot of noise, and they just come to you. So I was trying to get around to where I could kind of get some elevation on him, and he just came right to me and, just kind of met me halfway when I was in a bad spot. And I'm sitting there looking at this thing face on. And
that's cool. Did he see you and know what you were, or did he see you and like not quite understand?
I don't know. He ended up running off.
Okay.
So this kind of goes into a pretty cool encounter. But so he was bugling. I was moving through this really thick maple brush. He comes to me. We kind of meet at 3 or 5 yards. He was close. So we're sitting there looking at each other. I'm just kind of stuck. He turns around and runs off. Well, right shortly after he runs off, I hear a bugle from up top. Like, well, maybe he wasn't that spooked. So I just take off running up the hill after him. So I'm sprinting up the hill through this brush. I get to the top, and there's kind of an opening, and I bust out of there. And there's 2 guys that are sitting up there. So they bugle, and all of a sudden this guy just comes running, out of the brush, and like, I surprised them. They surprised me. I was like, "Did you see that bull?" And they're like, "What bull?" And I was like, "Man, there's a bull that ran right through here." And they're like, "No, we didn't see him." I was like, "Oh man, like." I was like, I don't mind to ruin your hunt, but can I sit down and take a breath here? Like, I'm winded.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they're like, yeah, no, that's fine. So they're really nice guys, local guys. And so we sat there and visited for a while. And so I was like, well, hey, I kind of popped into your spot here. I don't want to ruin your hunt. Where are you guys going? I said, well, we forgot something down in the bottom, so we were going to head back down that way. I said, all right, cool. I'll go around the other side. So I go on the other side of the ridge, and as soon as I get around, I hear two bulls just fighting like crazy on the next ridge over.
Yeah.
Just going at it. I was like, all right, well, here we go. So I take off running down the hill. I run back up the other side. And as soon as I get up, kind of the elevation they're at, they stop bugling, just nothing.
Huh.
And it was getting right, later in the morning when, so they're getting ready to bed down. So it's like, well, they must have just had enough. And I was like, they got to be in here. It's not like they went very far. And it was a really good bedding area. So I got around up above them and I tucked into these rocks, and it was pretty open in that bedding area. So I didn't feel really comfortable getting down and sneaking through there without busting them out. And by the sound of the bulls fighting, like they weren't little. I was like, I'm going to play this safe. I'm just going to hang out. So I kind of hung out for the afternoon up there, and I don't remember what time, but I heard one bugle, a bull, get up and bugle. It's like, all right, he's awake. So I started moving down. Next time he bugled, he was in the bottom. It's like, oh man, okay, he's going to make this tough for me. So I'm dropping down, and the next time he bugles, he's like around the ridge. It's like, oh man, okay, here we go. So I'm like dropping down, kind of angling down this finger, and I hear him bugle kind of on the other side. Mm-hmm. And of course, he's in this maple brush again. So then he bugles again. So I start moving in, and it's probably 4:00 in the afternoon. And I hear him raking. So I'm moving up, and I'm trying to get up above him so I can get a shot opportunity. And so it's this maple brush, and there's these little open pockets, in the maple brush. So I'm kind of moving in and out, and I see him raking this tree, but he's facing me. So it's like, okay, I got to get around him. So I start moving up, and I get almost above him, not quite. So I was probably 40 yards above him, and he was maybe another 20 yards to my left.
Okay.
Well, he saw me, so he turns and starts walking to my right, and I was standing in the open of this little, it was only maybe 10 yards across, maybe 10 by 20 yards, just this little opening. I'm kind of standing in the middle of it. He caught me right there. But like there's enough brush to where he could see movement, but he couldn't see that it was a person. So he starts walking to the right, and I'm kind of watching him, trying to figure out what I'm going to do here. And he turns and comes up the hill towards me, comes into my opening. So he's 10 yards at me, 10 yards from me. Yeah. I'm staying there with my bow. He turns, and this whole time, his head's swaying back and forth, and he's just panting and just drooling. And I'm standing there just shaking like a leaf. And this bull is 8 yards from me, and, he's just swaying his head, and I can see the whites of his eyes, and he's eyeballing me, and so I'm sitting there like, okay, how's this? And he was a good bull. I got some pictures of him later on. And he probably would have gone 320, 330.
It's a good bull.
His sword point on one side was broke off. The other side, it was probably 30 inches long.
Wow. That's crazy.
Just huge. So I got this bull 8 yards. So he gets behind this little clump of trees, and I'm like, oh, well, this now or never. And I, obviously you think back on it, it's like, man, there's so many different things I could have done here and probably killed this bull.
Yeah.
But just in the moment, it's like, oh, I got to try and draw on him. So I drew, and of course he spooked. So he kind of runs down the hill, but he wasn't super spooked. So he stops. So I start bugling at him, and I ended up bumping him again. And so then he runs off, gets with his cows. I find him again, and he's bugling the whole time. So I chase him till dark, and of course they just ended up going way back in there into this hellhole. Sun goes down, and I think I was 6 miles in.
Oof.
And the whole time I was looking at my Onyx, and there was a trail that kind of went all the way back to the road. I was like, okay, I can just kind of jump a couple ridges over and get back on this trail. Well, that trail didn't exist.
Oh, shit.
So I got back to the truck it was shortly after midnight.
Yeah. That's a trek, man. That's a trek.
Yeah.
But that's a cool experience. Like I said, I've been within 10 yards of a bull, but not with him fired up. Not with him talking or anything like that, but that's super cool. The thing I like most about that story, and I think this is funny with a lot of hunters, is like just the sheer detail. I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I can't remember like a conversation I had with my wife at noon today, but here you are telling this story with all these details. Like I'm sure you can even think about which direction the wind was going from what at this point, 8 years ago or something like that. So
this was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay. So yeah, still it's just so funny like the amount of detail that stick with us on these stories, and it's really cool. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't shoot one on that trip, and then I'm going to share a story from not this year, but the year before.
Okay.
So I was hunting in Wyoming with a good buddy of mine. He lives in Wyoming. So This was a pretty crazy hunt. So he got out there on Friday. He left. He gets Fridays off. So he left on Friday, got out there. I left Saturday morning. So I got into camp around 5 or 6 Saturday afternoon. So he was already out hunting. So I get everything unloaded, get on my 4-wheeler, drive up this trail, find some elk. And so, sun goes down, I go back to camp, he comes back later, and we're kind of just sharing some information and stuff. So we go back up the next day, and we ran into some elk, but nothing was really fired up. So we ended up bumping some elk. We had one bull that was kind of bugling, but not enough for us to really get on him. So this was a new area for us, and he had killed a bull in a different area the year before. So we're like, well, the elk aren't really talking too much here. Let's just go back to this other area that you know a little bit better and see what we can find there. So we pack up camp, and it's like 10 miles as the crow flies, but it takes a couple hours to drive around. So we get to the new spot, set up camp, head out that afternoon, and we run into sheep. I mean, it's just, grazed. There's sheep everywhere. It's like, well, okay, there's our number one spot, just full of sheep.
Like farm sheep. You're not talking like bighorn.
Right. Like,
okay.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever ran into sheep.
Yeah.
While you're elk hunting.
I haven't, no, but like we're talking lamb chop sheep. I've heard some people
like
running
thousands
into
of sheep.
Yeah, I've heard of people running into those, and then they've got like a shepherd, like they're like South American shepherd guys that like live with these sheep all summer long. Did you see that? Was he out there? Your shepherd? Okay,
yeah.
That's
so they
crazy.
got sheepdogs.
Yeah.
So speaking of sheep and bighorn sheep, so I'm going to do a side. So we were hunting mule deer in Colorado this year's second rifle, and the buck that I shot, we were stalking up on him. And we ended up bumping 2 different herds of bighorn sheep. So like we're up on the backside of this ridge, and I've got my buck down below, and we've got bighorn sheep just blowing out everywhere. It's like, are you kidding me? Like I think we counted 30 ewes and small rams.
That's crazy.
And they ran down the east side, and the deer was on the west side, and ended up getting them shot. But so back to Wyoming. So we run into sheepdogs, and they make a lot of noises, right? So the guys they're calling to the sheep, some of the sheep have bells on them. They've got their sheepdogs. And so generally when the sheep move in, the elk move.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we're going to have to figure out a new game plan. So there's another area that we wanted to go into, but it was a pretty far trek. Most people going with horses. So we're sitting there like, well, we could go back to camp and, grab our bivvy stuff and then head in tonight, because it was still early enough. It's kind of midday. We could just head in there tonight, bivvy out, and then we'll just hunt, in there for a day or two. It's like, okay, that's our plan. So we start heading back, and we've got our gear packed up, about to head out. And another one of our friends, he was hunting in Idaho. He texted us on the inReach and he was like, "Hey, it's been super dead out here. I'm going to come drive out and hang out with you guys for a couple days." So, I don't know if you ever used an inReach. There's just like a lot of times a huge delay.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, we're just about to leave for the night. And now he's saying he's going to be here at midnight. So then we're like trying to figure out what's going on. So we end up staying. So he gets into camp and we're sitting there, we're having some beers and stayed up a little too late. So it was like midnight. It's like, okay, well, we don't have a game plan for tomorrow. What are we going to do? And my buddy Taylor, he's like, well, I know a spot that's kind of right off the highway that he's like, I got an elk like right off the highway last year and it's just a horse trail. So it's pretty easy walking. It's like, all right, let's do that. So we get up in the morning.
I've heard plenty of people say like, if you can't hear cars anymore, you've gone too far. Like they hang out in that area that's like out of sight, but not too far, not too deep.
Right. And that's usually most of the elk that I run into are within 2 or 3 miles from the road.
Yeah.
So we start hiking up this and, we stayed up too late. And so it's like, Taylor, you said the elk were going to be right here. And he's like, well, they were last year, so he's like, I don't know, man, So we keep hiking. And it's like 2.5 miles up this horse trail. It kind of wraps around. There's all these, well, it follows a creek. And so then on the other side, there's all this dark timber and these, different drainages and bowls that come down.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of going from one, listening to one to the next. So we end up making it all the way up and it gets up to this ridge and then it splits. You can go north, or most people just kind of get up there and they get above all that dark timber. You walk on the bottom and they just make a loop back. And then a lot of times the guys with horses go to the north, you can get back in there a little farther. Well, if you go to the west, it opens up and it's like probably a mile of just sage, maybe half a mile of sage. And then there's a big ridge that goes north to south. And man, it's awesome. It's little patches of dark timber.
Yeah.
It's, maples, aspens, just patches. And that's what we really like to hunt, kind of more of that patchy stuff. I feel like you can see the elk, you can still move around in them. They've, their bedding areas a little more condensed than hunting some of the stuff like you have. It's just miles of dark timber. It's like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get up there and right off the bat, a couple bulls are just fired up. And we can see one is in this little opening, just raking this tree, fired up. It's like, all right, well, let's get over there. So we hustle down kind of around this deal, just trying to keep some cover, and finally coming down. So we got to come down, there's a creek, and then we got to go up the ridge that they're on. So we're just like running across the sage in the wide open, just trying to get to them. And so we're booking it. And Taylor's like, I don't know. I feel like we're out in the open too much. And our other buddy's just like, well, let's go. And he's a really, really good elk hunter. He's killed quite a few bulls. And he's like, nope, we just got to go. So we get down, cross the creek, and we're making our way up to kind of where they're into, like we're just getting into the timber patch that they're in. So I'm in front. Our one buddy that came from Idaho, he's in the middle, and then Taylor's behind him. And all of a sudden, I hear one of the guys say, "Hey, right," and 2 bulls come running down the hill, like 15 yards past me. So I draw, and they don't stop. The first one passes me and stops 10 yards from Taylor, and just stops. And it's just because the one bull's chasing the other one, he stops and just looks right at Taylor. And man, it was awesome. So like, I have my bow drawn and I'm like tracking him. And as soon as he stops, Taylor is just right there full draw and just puts one frontal right through this thing.
Oh,
and
man.
It just, barrels over the hill. And so then here comes the other bull running down the hill. So I run up and it's trying to figure out what's going on. So it's kind of like we're in the timber and then there's, at the kind of the break of the ridge and there's sage. He's, right on the edge of the sage. And so he's looking, trying to figure out what's going on. Well, come to find out, he could see that bull dead laying there on the other side. We couldn't see him, but he just piled up on the other side.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there looking, and I'm trying to sneak to get a shot. And so I end up chasing this bull up a little ways and didn't get a shot on him. So we sit down, we wait a little while, or an hour or whatever, go over, and there's Taylor's bull sitting there, and it is a nice 6-point. So we get it cut up, pack half of it out. So the next morning, we're like, okay, we still got half a bull to pack out. We're going to get in there. I have a tag, so I'm going to, we're going to see if we can hunt our way in there or whatever. And then if we don't get anything, we'll pack the rest of that bull out. So we hike back in there the next morning, and the elk are in the same spot. So it's like, okay. So we get up in there, and we end up going a little bit farther than we did the day before. So I was in the front. I hear some elk. I had a bull at 20 yards with no shooting lane. So I drew on him. And then he ended up turning around, and we bumped into those elk a couple times, but they didn't really spook. We just kind of kept bumping into them, but we couldn't get a shot, and they weren't talking at all. They're quiet, so it's pretty tough. So after messing with them for a while, we said, okay, let's leave these elk. Let's go try to find some other ones. So we get to the top of that ridge. As soon as we get to the top, elk are just bugling like crazy on the other side. And it is a steep hill down, and it is a steep hill up. And basically, the ridge that those elk are on, the top of it is the Idaho border.
Oh, no shit.
Right?
Okay.
So we're sitting there, and of course we didn't bring any food and hardly, any water or anything. So we have empty packs because we're going to pack out an elk.
Yep.
So Taylor, he had a big knot in his shoulder, so he wasn't really liking having his pack on and stuff. And this, it is steep down and steep up. And we're sitting there like, well, do we go after these bulls? And they're like another mile, they're past. And I was like, well, I might as well. I got a tag. And Taylor was like, I don't know, man. I might just sit here and watch you guys. Well, he ended up coming down the hill. But we run down this hill, and it was probably 800 yards down, really steep.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, they were in this little patch of timber up top. And on the back side, it was a bunch of, like a burn. So a bunch of blowdown and just nasty stuff. So we get to the other side, and we're like picking our way through all this deadfall. And we get up to the same level, and we're coming around, because they're on the north side. We're coming up the south side. So like we're coming around this ridge, and I can, this bull's bugling like crazy. I can hear him glunking, and it's probably 40 yards from me, the herd bull. So I'm trying to sneak in. I'm on this trail, and all of a sudden I see this elk coming on the same trail that I'm on. And it was a nice 6-point. But he's coming right in front of me, and he stops, and he had no idea I was there. And of course I have a bush right in front of me. And I'm like kind of out in the open, so I can't really move. And this bull's just sitting there, he's kind of eating on some leaves. He's listening to the herd bull. The herd bull's glunking and bugling. He's just watching. And it's a nice 6-point. And I'm just like, oh man, like crap. So I sat there for probably 10 minutes watching this bull. Finally he turns around and moves off. And so the other guys are kind of back behind me. And I said, hey, why don't you bugle and let's see if we can get this herd bull pulled up here, because obviously I can't move too much farther than there's elk right here. So they bugle, and as soon as they bugle, just everything breaks loose. Elk start running everywhere.
No shit.
It's just one bugle, and they just took off running. We had elk that were, just running out the bottom, running around the side, just going everywhere. So we're sitting there like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
What? So, and we're watching elk pour out the bottom. They're going up that steep hill on the other side. There's elk going north, south, and just running. And we're just like, well, they're still coming out the bottom. We might as well run down through all this deadfall and see if we can, what we can run into. So we get down in the bottom, and by then they'd kind of all cleared out. We're still watching elk just panting, coming up, going up over this ridge that we just came down to get in there. And so we hike down along the bottom. There's a creek down there. So we're hiking, finally we stop, and we're like, well, do you have any water? We're like, well, I got a little bit. And do you have any food? Because it's like 1:00 in the afternoon. So we're sitting there sharing, leftover chip crumbs that you have in the bottom of your, the Ziploc in the bottom of your pack or whatever. Like we're literally eating barbecue Frito twists, like just the crumbs. And all of a sudden we hear this bull sound off. So if you follow this creek down, it tees off. So like, it's a steep hill on either side of this creek bottom, and then it kind of comes to a T, and there's a ridge that runs east to west. Well, there's a bull over there bugling, and I'm skipping some stuff, but at this point I'd already drawn on like 4 different elk that day, so I was getting pretty discouraged.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a good day, but I get it.
Yeah, so I was kind of discouraged, like, oh man, like so many close calls, couldn't make it happen. So we're like, well, we might as well go after this one. We're already back in here, and we're over 5 miles in from the road. So we take off trekking towards this thing. So this T, kind of the creek comes into another creek and makes a T, and then there's a ridge that goes east to west on the other side, and there was a little saddle up there with 2 little fingers that came down off of it. And this bull was up there on the top of the saddle. And he is just, he's bugling every 30 seconds. He's just trying to get his cows back. So we start trucking up there, and we get about halfway up, and I can hear an elk on the other finger on the other side. And I was like, hey, there's an elk right over here. And our other buddy's like, no. And they're like, you want the herd bull. He's up top. Go up there. So I start making my way up, and I get to the top, and like I can hear this bull bugling. He's got to be close. I just can't see him yet, like probably within 50 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there just trying to figure out where he's at before I move, too much. And all of a sudden, here come his cows, just come running up from the bottom. They run up past me, and I'm like, the wind's right. There's no way they spooked me. Like they were just coming to his bugle. Well, he gets those cows and he takes off, and they go to the next ridge over, like another 500 yards. And it's like, I'm shot. I'm not going after them.
Yeah.
Like,
out of Frito dust. I get it.
Yeah, out of Frito dust. So so the other guys had kind of held back. I'd gone up by myself to try to sneak in on this bull. Well, right after that happened, and I kind of had given up, I hear this other elk. I was like, oh, well, that must have been that, smaller bull or whatever that we passed on the way up. So I cow called. Well, that herd bull heard me cow call, and he bugled right back. And I was like, okay. So I cow called again. And the next time he was half the distance. He thought he forgot one of his cows, and he's coming back. The next time he calls, he's within bow range, and here I see him come, and he's up on the ridge. So I'm kind of in this saddle, and it's timber on my right side, and it's open on my left, and I have some shooting lanes, but I need him to stay up high. Well, of course, he comes up, screams 20 yards away, and then moves down, towards my right, where I can't shoot him. So he's moving across. Well, my buddies had snuck up behind me. I didn't know this. And they let out a bugle. And this bull turns 90 degrees, bugles, and comes running towards me, like at them.
Yeah.
Right? So I was already at full draw, because when I saw him at 20 yards come up over the hill, I drew. So he comes past me at 8 yards. I shoot him, right? He didn't even know he was shot. He kept going, stopped. So he's like behind me at this point, trying to figure out what's going on. and I can see just blood pumping out of him, and I'm just shaking. So he turns around and takes off running kind of down the hill, kind of side hilling, and stops at 35 yards. I knock another arrow, and there's a big dead pine tree in between me and him. And there's a spot probably the size of a pie plate that I was like, I think I can get an arrow in there. So I kneel down, I shoot him again. He takes off through a log. He takes off maybe another 10 yards and just piles up right there. It was like, holy cow, guys. Yeah. So, they come up running and he's just laying right there. And it's like, that went from basically giving up on the day. It's like, okay, well, I'm out of water, I'm out of food. And I just, I think I drew 4 times that day on different elk. I was like, didn't make it happen. Now I get to pack out half an elk.
What spurred them to like change their plan and come up to you without telling you? Like that's a recipe for disaster in a lot of circumstances. Now, in your case, it worked out great, but like, why did they leave where they said they would be?
Well, we didn't really have like, hey, we're going to stay here. It was just like we were getting close. And so it was like, hey, I'm going to go up ahead because we weren't calling. We were just sneaking in on them. Bugling.
Got it. Okay.
So 3 guys versus just 1,
Yeah.
But they had kind of just kept creeping up and they could hear me calling and stuff. So they knew something was going on. So they just kind of kept moving and they saw that bull when he came over the hill too. And so then, they bugled at him and it just, he screamed right in our face and turned and just came right after us.
That's amazing, man. That's such a cool story. So he was the herd bull. Was he a big fella?
No. So it was a general unit. So he was a 5-point, really nice 5-point. But he was just mean.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And filled the freezer regardless. But that was a great story, man. I love it. You make elk hunting sound really, for the most part, pretty easy. I want everyone to understand. I went hunting, and I think I went like 4 years before I even saw an elk. I was worried that when I saw my first elk, I wouldn't know the difference between an elk and a deer. It turns out that's an easy thing to figure out. But man, you've had some great seasons.
Yeah, this year was really good too. I shot a bull with my bow. I shot my first mule deer in Colorado, and then I shot a really nice whitetail here at home this year. So,
hell yeah, man. Well, congratulations. I had a good year. I didn't go elk hunting, which felt weird. This is the first time since I started hunting that I didn't go elk hunting. But I did shoot a cow moose and an antelope with my bow. So and I went to Hawaii and shot axis deer. So I had a good year. Cool. I had a very good year. Well, cool, Noah, man. This was fun. Do you have any other stories for us, or are we wrapping this thing up?
I think those are kind of the highlights.
Okay.
I guess
Cool, man. Yeah. Well, then at this point, it's up to you whether you want to walk off into the sunset or if you want to share some kind of social media, something or another, and we can have some people follow you.
I do have social media. It's not hunting related. It's for my business.
What do you do?
I'm a trim carpenter. So
okay.
I do, trim houses, do custom built-ins, cabinet installs, stuff like that. So that's Hines_carpentry.
Cool. I'll throw it into the show notes if anyone's in Nebraska. Give our boy a call. No, man, this was a ton of fun. I really appreciate again that you reached out in the first place, and then you took the time on this evening here to share some pretty amazing hunting stories. I'm jealous and also fired up for September. Hopefully, I have half the encounters that you have in an average season.
Yeah, I started elk hunting in 2017, gone every year since. And there's definitely a learning curve. I got super lucky on my first year. But then, I hadn't shot a bull until that 5-point we just talked about and that was last year. But the year before that, I kind of felt like that 2 weeks, just being able to be out for 2 weeks. I was solo for most of that. I did have a buddy in camp, but he didn't really hunt with me too much. He was more fishing.
Yeah.
So I got 2 weeks of just solo, run around chasing elk in a really good unit. So I got to kind of try out some things, figure out some stuff, kind of learn how they work a little bit. And then
that's cool.
Yeah, I shot a bull the last 2 years. So
sounds to me like you have something that is also very helpful for elk hunting, which is like you work hard. Like you're like, we just dropped down this mountain and went 2 miles away to that mountain. A lot of folks won't do that, and I think that's probably why you have the success that you do, man. So
well, and it's my buddy Taylor. He's probably more. He gets more fired up about elk hunting than I do, and he lives for it.
Yeah,
and he's in the gym every day, and then we get out to elk hunt. And he's like, man, you don't even work out that much, and you're still out hiking me. It's like, yeah, but I'm carrying around a 20-pound tool bag every day, walking upstairs, carrying stuff up scaffolding. It's like you stay in pretty decent shape.
Also, some guys are just hikers. I know some folks that like they don't really need to do anything all year long, and they can just hike. Like it's some people are half billy goat, I guess. So.
Well, and I'm pretty tall and lean, so I got the long leg advantage. That definitely helps.
There you go. I'm tall, but I'm not lean. So, all right, Noah, man, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you again, man. I appreciate you. I have a feeling in a couple of years we'll get you back on with a whole mess of new stories for us.
Yeah, well, I got some more too. So I got some pretty good ones. But
all right, cool, man. We'll do it. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, Michael.
All right, guys. That's it. Another couple stories in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. I do appreciate you guys. I also want to thank Noah, of course, for coming on the podcast and taking the time to go fill out that little form that you can get to from, our Instagram page. I'll find a way to get it on the website. But for now, the Instagram page. But yeah, guys, if you have any stories, please connect with us. If you know someone who has any stories, please send them our way. Beyond that, give us a review, whatever you're listening to right now. If you could give us a whatever star review you think is acceptable, and then give us a follow, I would greatly appreciate that. Now, get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.